Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Scavengers Reign, Season 1, Episode 2. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, obviously this episode mainly revolves around a storm is happening and our different groups and how they are dealing with it, but also with Ozzy, we get a little taste of the past, and the same with Cayman. I think I pronounced it like common last episode, but it's Cayman. I think it's probably almost like Kamen Rider. But anyway, it doesn't matter. Let's start off with Cayman's side of things. Obviously, he's still under the control of that creature, and it's hard to say whether it's trying to protect him because it feels that he's useful in some shape or form, because I guess it almost feels like it treats Cayman like a pet, where it's just, but obviously for him, when he's looking at it, he sees Fiona, whether that's a girlfriend, wife, whatever the situation may be, his significant other, and he's kind of being driven by that, because it's like, once again, he's alone in all of this, whereas at least Ozzy has Levi, and Sam has Ursula, and Ursula has Sam. But it is interesting that the different pairings and their different circumstances and what kind of toll that takes on them, because it's like at least Sam and Ursula have human connection. I'm sure Levi's going through their own journey. We'll have to wait to see. But then like Ozzy's still going through this thing of like, I'm with this robot, and it's not the human connection. And then you have Cayman, who has a human connection, but it's not real. It's just a creature on this planet messing with his head. But like I said, it does seem like it goes out of its way to protect him, and I'm not sure why. Because it was trying to use Fiona's voice to stop him, because he was clawing out of, like, essentially, these creatures built a nest to protect themselves. I mean, it's just their home in general, but I think it probably fortified even more for the storm. So, obviously, a lot of the creatures on this planet have adapted and prepared themselves for the habitat of this planet, and just knowing that things could spur on at any moment, and when stuff goes down, well, this is what we do. But because we get little flashbacks with Cayman, and kind of like his short-temperedness, and I think it's just when you're all alone, you have these regrets about all the things that you did, you wish you had done differently. He had kind of gotten mad at Fiona because she's like, oh, you used to love coming to this like cabin or whatever, but he's just like, he's getting frustrated with trying to, like, we don't know what it is, but he's just angry, and he's kind of lashing out and kind of taking it out on Fiona. Just like, who knows, maybe it's just one of those things of there's a lot of internal stuff he's dealing with, maybe there's a lot of external stuff, like maybe just life isn't going the way he wants it to on whatever way, and because he's like, I don't want to really be here, I only came here because you wanted to take the trip. And she's like, oh, like, you used to love coming here, so are you saying like you're only doing this just for me and not just because you want to be here, like that I should be thankful that you decided to like reluctantly come along type of thing? So he went out on a boat when she was begging him to come back inside, and he nearly drowned. Like, either he just happened to luckily wash up before he drowned, because like Fiona was talking about it. Once again, this thing is telepathic and telekinetic, because it can get inside of your head. So I'm curious, is it actually taking memories from, like, because does it inject you with something, and basically you see what you want to see in the regards of he's seeing Fiona because that's what's on his mind, she's on his mind, and the creature isn't actively peering through your head of like, oh, this is someone important to you, let me show you the form of Fiona. But it does feel more purposeful. But that's the thing, we just don't know, like, how much of this is this creature's instinct of just like, oh, it's pushing something to the foreground that's important to you, not that it's deep dive into your mind and recognize like, okay, what memory and thing am I going to use to lure you in, and it ends up being Fiona. That's going to be an interesting thing to really discover, like how this thing really operates and how it chooses what it does. Like I said, I thought maybe it was using Common as food, but maybe last episode it wasn't trying to eat off of Common. Maybe it was actually feeding him. Like, for whatever reason, it has latched onto him for some reason. This one in particular, there's just so much we don't know, but it saved him. And obviously he kind of breaks down crying. It's like, oh, it was you saved me. And he's hugging Fiona. But the thing is he actually hugging Fiona, or is he hugging nothing? Because, like, because there was also that, like, that moment. I I haven't decided if I'm going to use it for the thumbnail or not, but I thought it was kind of this beautiful shot where Cayman is lying down, like, because Fiona was like, no, come lay next to me. She's just kind of staring off in the distance. And then the moment he lays down, the camera zooms out and you see it's the creature where she was. So it's not like it's just a projection of like, oh, this empty space is Fiona. It's like, it can be, but it's like this thing can also like show itself as Fiona. It's just, it's so interesting what that storyline is going to be and where that's going to go. Like I said, it's such an isolated story, and it seems like on some level it is in conjunction with the fact is that he does, or at least at one point, kind of isolated himself, and maybe that's supposed to be the irony that you isolated yourself in life, and now here you are so alone, but the only comfort you have is this creature taking care of you, so you're not alone. So it's going to be an interesting dynamic to see that kind of continuing, where that ends up going. Then we have the Ozzy situation. Like I said, we get a little peek into there is someone special, but it seems like Ozzy kind of pushed people away in her own way as well. Because there was this person like, oh, hey, like, you know, everyone else is at the party. Of course, you'd be here. I enjoyed, like, us hanging out last night. But Ozzy was immediately like, you don't read too much into it. So it seems like Ozzy might like that person. I can't remember the character's name. Ozzy did say it. But it's like, I don't know if it's like a thing of like Ozzy got so caught up in their work, but when it's all said and done, it's like, oh, well, I figure you're lying about stopping by, so here I'm gonna leave the book with you. Now we see later on that Ozzy's reading that book and it's a lot more damaged. I mean, we know at least they've been here for months, so I guess Ozzy's trying to hold on to that, being like it's important. Like, was it like this is that person? Because we don't know if that's like before the mission. I mean, most likely it was like before the mission, and it's just, once again, so many regrets of, man, I should have done things differently. I wish I had, very much in the same vein as Cayman, I think. But she tried to draw one of those creatures nearby. I don't know if she was going to use it to try and help, like, oh, we're going to get on top of this thing and fly, or at least maybe she was, and Levi was just going to follow suit. I don't know what the plan was, because Ozzy like drew the creature in, and it's almost like this, like, it's some kind of winged worm thing, but it flew off with her bag, and I thought like, oh man, it's going to fly away with you, and it kind of did, but obviously like a lot of her stuff fell out of her bag. So at the same time, the storm's coming, so they didn't really have time to really prepare. But we had this interesting development with Levi, where Levi had been working on stuff. It's like, yeah, while you were sleeping, I came when I was exploring a nearby area and found this kind of little pocketed ecosystem away from the storm. And Levi's like, why would you do that? It's like, I don't know. Something inside of me is telling me to do it. And I don't know if it has something to do with that organism or whatever it is that's... Levi brought it up last episode. It's like, oh, this thing is helping me, because Ozzy was like, is that really actually helping? We see that it's actually why Levi was able to reattach its arm this episode. It's because that substance was also growing there. It might have actually gone out of its way to be like, all right, place all this up there, let it grow out a little bit, then reattach it. But it seems like maybe that it's hard to say whether Levi on their own is getting more sentient, or whether whatever this growth is on them is kind of taking over the machinery, kind of, in a sense, giving it its own free will, its own mind, you know? Because Ozzy... So it seems like Levi's are a brand of these creatures. Like, it's like it's a particular model of robot. Because I was thinking Levi was just kind of a unique... But it's like, well, Levi's becoming unique, I think. But Levi's just like a brand of these robots. But it's like, because Ozzy's like, I've worked with many before, and just none have kind of acted the way you have. Because it's like, here you are in this place taking some of the seedlings and growing stuff, but it's not food, because some of the food or fruit that's being grown isn't stuff that Ozzy can eat. It's like, yeah, some of it's poisonous for humans. And Ozzy's like, well, then why are you growing it then? And Levi's like, I don't know, maybe I wasn't growing it for you. Like, because Levi's figuring this out as well. It's like, yeah, there's just something is going on, and it is changing. And it's like some of his behaviors throwing Ozzy off of like, why are you doing what you're doing? I don't know if it's supposed to be kind of like a AI thing of it is just because it's becoming more sentient because of its circumstances. Like I said, I don't know if it feels like that stuff that's growing on its body has to be playing some role. And I mean, there's a lot of sentient stuff on this planet they don't fully understand. Yeah, they've been here for a while, But still, like, we have no, especially where the first batch of it is, like, on, like, it's, when you open it up, it's there on, like, kind of, like, almost looks like it, like, on Levi's console, like, where it's like, oh, this is where you turn Levi on and off, and the diagnostic stuff seems to be there. So for that to be kind of the first place that it was at, I mean, once again, it benefited Levi to kind of help you keep Levi running, but there's so much more at play there. I'm so interested to see what happens. So we have that side of things. Luckily, Ozzy was able to find her book that was important. So it's like, right, we got to go ahead and go and try and head to the Demeter, which is where Sam and Ursula are on. I mean, they don't know if there are any other survivors, which we as the audience know, like, okay, there are others, and all they can do is hope that other people saw the Demeter and decide to go that way. There is also the conversation, because I brought it up last episode, wasn't the power on the Demeter out, and then it kicks back on, and it was like, oh, 30% survival or whatever. Like, I guess, like, they have 35% power left that will keep them alive, or maybe I don't, that's how I read it. But Sam's kind of reading it as like a thing of like, we'll be fine. As long as nothing gets inside of the Demeter before we get there, they should be fine. You know, because like I said, the rest of the crew is still like in sleep. So once again, whether or not we'll actually get to the rest of the crew in the rest of the season, or whether it's just going to be these 5 characters plus the creature that's with Cayman, whether that just becomes our entire cast. Because I mean, at least when I was looking up the cast for this show, only 5 people popped up. So obviously we're going to have additional voices, but it seems like those are going to be probably pop-ins that are related to the past and not necessarily present. Because even Sam was like, yeah, it might take us, we might be even further from the meter than we thought. I mean, it might take us a couple days, might even be like a week. So it depends on how they handle the time jumping around for this story. Because, it, you know, from like episode 1 to now, it's probably been like maybe a day or so. Probably maybe a little more, whatever the case may be. But the storm popping up, we had this really interesting development about the storm, how there are shards of stuff inside of the storm, and when it cuts you, it starts growing on your body. So, I mean, I guess it doesn't, I mean, I guess hopefully it didn't get in Ursula's bloodstream, but it did cut her arm, and we even see Sam at one point get cut by it. But it's like, I guess as long as you brush it off, I guess maybe it only doesn't necessarily enter the bloodstream, it just stays surface level. But basically when it cuts you, it implants itself and then just kind of like grows from there. It's almost like a splinter that gets stabbed into you and then it starts sprouting and growing, like unless you remove it. So that's kind of a wild circumstance. And obviously they came across those creatures. It's like, oh, these eggs are on the beach, so we're going to like suck them in and basically take them underwater. Because like the main part of the body of these creatures is below water, and they kind of almost have like an elephant trunk type of thing, like pointing up in the air. I guess that way you can have oxygen coming down and being processed and given to these babies. That's why they're kind of left out there on the beach to kind of absorb the oxygen. So, but Sam and Ursula sneak in amongst the eggs. Problem is that because it is the circle of life, there are creatures that wait for these moments, and the bug type things go in there. I hate bugs. I was reading this webtoon recently called Jungle Juice. It's kind of giving me more of appreciation for bugs, but still hasn't completely got rid of my like the taste for bugs. Because anyway, this thing crawls in, and it's like the moment it goes in, I'm like, oh, this thing eats those babies, don't it? Because they're defenseless in this moment. It's just, once again, it's like things have adapted to compensate for food and stuff like that. But either way, one gets into where Sam and Ursula are, and it's like, well, they don't have any real weaponry. All they have is like Sam's knife, and it's like, oh boy, this is going to get ugly. This thing also like has a screech. It has like a banshee scream that kind of like paralyzes you, like to the point, I think it was like Sam's ears started bleeding, but then also like you kind of get in this paralytic state where it kind of shuts your, I don't know if it shuts down your nervous system or kind of like pauses it or whatever, but they were defenseless. Luckily, Ursula came to it, pulled out the knife that Sam had stabbed into it, flipped the thing over, and then gutted it. It's like, ugh. But you're also kind of like, once again, because I hate bugs, I'm like, yeah, take that, bastard. But yeah, gutted that thing, and it's like, cool, we need to get the hell out of here. So I even love that the ending is like, oh, that creature spits out the bug at the end too, because it's like it's a foreign body in there as well. I guess maybe Sam and Ursula weren't, maybe they were just as much of a foreign body, because the moment they came out, because none of the eggs did, because obviously, like, I think this, it's still kind of like, oh, I gotta purge this from my body. Like, there's foreign bodies here, so. But it didn't seem like it necessarily spit Sam and Ursula out, but it definitely spit that bug out. But I think it's so interesting because we saw it last episode too, and now we're seeing it this episode, where there's life growing from these deceased bodies. So we saw it in one, like, deceased creature's body of, like, there was a flower growing, and we see it coming off this bug as well. So I'm like, I guess further proof of, like, further representation of the circle of life on this planet. I have no idea what to fully make of that. I wonder, are we going to kind of get one? Is that always going to be kind of near the tail end of any episode? Is kind of that representation, or just like things keep going? Even at the end, there's always kind of new life being birthed, and it kind of maybe coincides and supposed to represent how each of our groups are still pushing forward despite the complicated circumstances. I don't know. I could be reading way too much into it, so I'm really curious to see where the next episode takes us with all of this. But really, that's all I want to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.